Now, wait a minute. Don't
off.
gloss over that fucking mentally handy. Here's what happened. We're working with Pillman and Zink, and in the finish, I jump in and go to hit Pillman with the racket, but he ducks it and he slaps a sleeper on me.
Okay.
When he did, he cross-faced my nose. My nose started bleeding a little bit. Well, as soon as the boys glom him and I roll out, I've got the belts in one hand and the racket in the other hand. And this guy, he's about 40 years old. He's about 6'3", rangy guy, probably about 180, 190, gets up and from the front row and swings and punches me in the back of the head. Well, I turn around and there ain't no cops anywhere around and I'm fucking pissed anyway, right? So I whack him one time with the racket, which he don't sell. There's still no cops around. Well, now I've committed. And if you hit a motherfucker once and ain't nobody to break it up, you need to keep hitting him because when you stop hitting him, he's going to start hitting you. So I proceeded to, I threw the belts up in the air and I took both hands. And then he sold a second one and he goes down in the front row and I just keep whacking him until somebody gets there to get in between us, right? So I fucking then grab the shit and we go back to the locker room.
Now, before you get back to locker,
okay.
When you're squaring off with him,
Yes,
do you have
yes.
any indication that he's mentally handicapped?
No.
Or do you just assume that all wrestling fans are?
Well, no, he's a big fucking 6 foot, 190 pound fucking 40-year-old fucking redneck from Columbia, South Carolina. It's not like he's visibly.
All right, that's.
I later found out he was mentally challenged, let's put it that way, according to the newspaper. But he was, at that point, he was somebody just punched me and I'm, you know, I'm in this thing. And as I said, one of the eyewitnesses said it did look like an axe murder. But anyway, we go back in the locker room and my nose is bleeding anyway, right? So before anybody else gets in there, I whack it another time, right? And it starts coming. Well, then here comes the athletic commissioner. And he says, Jim, are you all right? I said, yeah. He said, I saw him. He hit you right in the nose. Yep, he sure did. Then here comes the cops. And the cops work the matches all the time in Columbia. Here he comes. Jim, are you okay? I said, yeah. He said, I saw him. He hit you right in the nose. Third guy to walk in the locker room, Mike Campbell, the son of South Carolina Governor Carroll Campbell. We're in the state capitol, and he's a huge Ric Flair fan, and he always comes to the matches. Jim, are you okay? I saw him. He hit you right in the nose. Okay, I'm good, right? I said, I'll be all right. I said, Charlotte's an hour away. I'm going to go to the hospital there. So I went home. By then it stopped bleeding, obviously. I hung upside down off my bed till I got it bleeding again. I went and I looked in the mirror and I fucking hit the nose 2 or 3 more times to get a little swelling going. Went to the hospital and got the x-rays and they see the swelling and they packed the shit and everything. So I got the fucking paperwork. And so then, where's the letter?
Such a work.
I thought I reprinted it in here. I have the memo where it says, I think it's in another section. Well, anyway, the memo from Hurd said the evidence at hand more than substantiates that you were attacked by a fan. However, we will agree to beef up security if you, here we go. No, that's when I quit. Anyway, they agreed to beef up security if I wouldn't fucking axe murder any more of the fans, which, all right, very good. But, you know, sorry. Shit happens. He shouldn't have punched me in the back of the fucking head.
Agreed.
If somebody should have been watching him.
Agreed.
Generally, when that had happened, many of the numerous dozens and dozens and dozens of times to me in the past, that was the idea. We need to get the fucking people fired up. So,
you know, nowadays they're told, as far as the workers today tell me, in the big companies, maybe one that's publicly traded, that if someone runs into the ring, you are to do this. And not touch them and allow security to come in and remove them.
But you have to remember that in some of these, there's been several times, a couple times in Smoky Mountain, definitely several times in Louisiana, the cops are on their side because the cops ain't smart either and the cops are mad at us. Bobby and Dennis were actually detained and Dennis's van impounded by the fucking Coushatta, Louisiana Police Department, where the sheriff demanded to know what that was that they used on TV last week to beat the Rock and Roll Express. We put the ether on them. And the sheriff was fucking hot. And he said, what was that you used on them boys at Rock and Roll Express? And Dennis said, ether. What about it? Bobby's like, I want to go home to my children. Yeah. And then the sheriff says, I got a guy down the cell block, thinks he's a pretty good wrestler. We got him on charge of murder. Dennis said, bring him up, I'll wrestle him. You know, it was that kind of fucking thing.
Oh, God.
But, you know, the guys have had the guns pulled on by cops, you know, in the past, etc.
You're on your own.
You were on your own, yeah. And one time in Richmond, this fucking guy ran in the ring on the Horseman. And fucking right as goddamn Arn, he had tried to tackle, I think, maybe Tully, but Arn got him around the fucking neck and had his fucking hand like this and was pulling him up in the nose like that. And JJ, with his dress shoes, kicked the fan in the face and broke Arn's fingers because he was... Yeah, you know, here's the thing. Guys have been cut, guys have been stabbed, guys have been shot. Bobby Heenan's been shot at a number of times. It was better deal with the shit there, don't get cut and don't get shot, and in court, at least they ain't gonna cut you and shoot you, so you can deal with it later. The second lowest rated Clash of the 11 broadcast to that point, doing a 4.1 rating and 7.5 share. It beat only the June 1989 Clash that I believe I mentioned earlier was coming off the disastrous George Scott debacle.
Why is the Junkyard Dog here? Why is he in the main event of the Clash of Champions?
Dog, at one time, was one of the biggest box office attractions in the business. For Mid-South, under Bill Watts, and was huge on TBS, and was enormous in Houston, and Ole remembered that, and especially because we were still primarily, our stronghold, if we had one, was in the South, and Dog was a huge name and a childhood hero of many people, and that was 6-7 years before that, and he had gone to the WWF, and he'd gotten personal problems, and he had gotten out of shape. And he was never a great worker, but he was an incredible personality. But at that point, even Rick could not. As I told Rick one time about a match he had on a Clash with Lex Luger, I said, Rick, you stole the show. And he smiled. I said, but it was petty theft.
Well, he's only got to go 6 minutes and 11 seconds here.
Yeah, it was 6 minutes, 11 seconds too long.
Anything else you got to say about Dog?
I loved him as a person. We made a lot of money with him, and I miss him, and I'm sorry he passed away, but that was not a good match nor a good choice of things to do on television.
This is from The Observer.
By the way, Sprite Zero, baby, no caffeine. Never had it, never will.
Jim Cornette had a heart attack scare this past week, but as it turned out, he simply had a gastrointestinal attack and was back in action by the end of the week. Jim Cornette was hospitalized Monday night in Charlotte.
By the end of the week?
And in the
that's right. Well, we were booked off 4 days, so I didn't take any time off.
It's not a challenge to your manhood.
I'm just saying.
You're in the intensive care cardiac unit. Doctors eventually diagnose the cause of your internal problems as acute Pepsi overdose. He apparently consumed 62 ounces of the dreaded drink in the hours before his body revolted on him. Cornette is
no, my body was revolting, is what it. And it's not actually. It was never measured, actually. But here's the thing. For some time, I had been having what I now know to be heartburn at night in the hotels. But since I'd always had a cast iron stomach and I'd never had that problem, I didn't know what heartburn was. So I was drinking more cold drinks to fuck it because I was always thirsty and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, fuck. And at the time, my drink of choice was Pepsi. So we do Marietta, Georgia TV, where I did color on a couple of matches. Stan was there, and I don't even know why, because they didn't use, I don't think, the midnight that night. But anyway, we drive back to Charlotte, and we used to meet at a place where we would drive down the same road for a little while, and Stan would go that way, and I'd go this way to go home, Bobby go, whatever. So we all get our cars, and Bobby's gone, and I'm driving down the road, and I'm right behind Stan, and all of a sudden, it was like somebody was sitting on my chest. I was having trouble breathing. And my dad died of a heart attack, sudden heart attack in the middle of nowhere, bird watching, right? 53 years old. I can't fucking breathe. I'm getting lightheaded and dizzy. I pull up next to Stan. I roll the window down. And I said, Stan, I think I'm having a heart attack. He said, fuck. He said, and Stan's real medical phobic too, right? He said, go to the hospital, because there was a hospital right up the road, right near our house, right? On the same road we were going. I said, fuck it. I'd take off and I run the red light. Well, Stan, the only thing he's more than medical phobic is he's law enforcement phobic. He wouldn't run the red light. I'm about to fucking die, but he's sitting there in 3 o'clock in the morning. There's not a car in sight anywhere. Stan will not run the red light. So I go to the fucking hospital, and when he gets there, I'd actually pulled in sideways right in front of the emergency room, and my fucking driver door was still open, hanging open, right? And he drives in behind me. I went to the desk, and by the time that I got there, I couldn't talk, I couldn't draw breath enough. All I could do was point to my chest, and they grabbed me and they rushed me in the fucking deal. And they're hooking me up to all this shit. And they're giving me nitroglycerin. And Stan calls my wife, and I'm a mile from my house. She comes down, and they're both out in the waiting room, and Stan's thinking the doctor's going to come back any minute and go, like that. And it started subsiding, and they kept me overnight for observation. But basically, the doctor came in. He said, "Are you under a lot of stress?" I said, "Oh, yes." He said, "Do you eat a lot of spicy food?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Do you drink a lot of caffeine?" I said, "Yes." He said, "You've had, it mimics a severe acid reflux, gastrointestinal thing up in your esophagus." And that's one of the things that, before I realized it, is fucked with my voice along with screaming in the big arenas, is it eats away at your esophagus. That's back when Zantac was prescription. So he puts me on prescription Zantac, and he says, "Avoid all that stuff." I said, "I can't. I work for fucking Jim Hurd. I can't avoid stress." So I took prescription Zantac, whatever, twice or whatever, 3 times a day until the end of the year when I quit. And a week later, and I never stopped. I stopped drinking the caffeine, but I never stopped eating spicy foods. And once I was out of there, I quit taking the Zantac. And the only time I had a problem with it again, it flared up in Smoky Mountain. Imagine that, stress. But it was the herd disease is what it was. The old man was nice. The old man, I don't think, likes his kid.
It's a fundraiser for Jesse Helms. It's in Charlotte. Flair is there, as is Stan Lane.
Yeah.
How does this come about, particularly Stan's involvement in this?
Well, the original George Bush was a friend of Paul Bosch's from Houston for years and was a wrestling fan. And I think Stan just went because Flair probably said, "Hey, you want to come out and go to this fucking, deal?"
Was Stan a Republican, or he just wanted to meet the president?
No, he just wanted to meet the president.
Okay.
And Jesse Helms, Bob Caudle worked in Jesse Helms' office for years and years. Yeah, that's why when I first went there, I had no idea of this. And I called Bob Caudle because he had the red nose. I said, "Shut up, you old alcoholic." And David Crockett said, "You called an aide to Senator Jesse Helms an alcoholic." I said, "Who the fuck's Jesse Helms?" I didn't, But yeah, Stan just was hanging out for the fucking drinks, I'm pretty sure.
Did Ric Flair talk politics behind the scenes back then? Or?
No, because I didn't pay any attention to politics at all back then because the world seemed to be running well. I didn't really start paying attention to politics until Bush fucked us completely all up. But we never talked politics. We never talked anything but wrestling.
Had Ric Flair,
wrestling and pussy.
Had Ric Flair ever run, would you have voted for him?
For what?
President.
Oh, God, no.
Okay. Well, you're friends.
No, that's why I know he shouldn't be president. I shouldn't be president.
Very good.
That's
Some people still hold that office to a higher standard.
Yeah, part of the thing about knowing who to vote for is the best thing is when you know whether you should run for something or not. No, I'm not qualified to be the president, and I know that. I wish fucking Trump had that level of self-awareness. We wouldn't be in the fucking shithole we're in right now.
We've taken that anyone can be president thing to a whole new level.
Yeah, sure can.
What did you think of the match?
It wasn't Flair and Steamboat, but it was close enough for, at the time, it was what we had. It did a 2.0 buy rate, 285,000 homes. I wrote after Flair lost the title, it occurred to people they'd rather see Sting chase it than actually hold it.
Well, I was going to say, his run is considered a failure somewhat. And some people cite it when defending keeping him out of the Hall of Fame. Do you think that's fair?
No. The Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame or the WWE Hall of Fame or what Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I guess any Hall of Fame.
Well, no, not that. Nothing was going to draw at this point with this company and this level of fucking incompetence at the top. So that shouldn't be held against him. Having said that, at that time, Sting had been into business not 5 years yet. And all of a sudden, they want him to be the guy. Flair did a great job. As long as it was Flair, see, that's the thing. Here's another thing we didn't talk about. Hurd wanted to retire Flair, and Hurd wanted to have Luger versus Sting be the fucking top match, world title rivalry, whatever. When Sting worked with Flair, it was great. When Luger worked with Flair, it was great. When Sting worked with Luger, not only was it not great, but it didn't draw because there was no leader and there was no, Flair was the straw that stirred the drink in that equation. And Sting and Luger were being put in the impossible position with Luger having just been in the business same amount of time, 5 years, not even. Mm-hmm. They looked great, but Sting probably tell you to this day, he didn't know fucking, how to wind his ass from scratch his watch at that point compared to what the world champion should know about how to perform or how to talk or how to carry themselves or whatever. So you're trying to get young guys over, but it's a process, and you can't just say, that's why Roman Reigns, you can't just say, I want that guy to be the guy. The fans have to agree with it somewhat. Yeah. Has to have enough experience to be able to fucking get over and earn that spot, and
then sometimes it still doesn't work anyway.
And sometimes still doesn't work anyway. Right. So, it shouldn't keep him out of the Hall of Fame, especially considering, depending on what the Hall of Fame is and some of the people that are in the Hall of Fame. That was another one of those grudge matches. We had a grudge against The Office. Imagine this. There's Tracy Smothers and Steve Armstrong, the Southern boys, coming out. They took the Confederate flags away from them, I think, by this point. But they're coming out to this. It's on pay-per-view, so it's this hokey-ass, generic, canned, what they considered Southern music or whatever the fuck. I don't know. There was train whistles, and I don't know what the fuck was going on. And the people in Baltimore wanted to see that like they wanted to see their mother hooked up to a fucking life support machine, right? And then we come out and they're cheering us because now that's the point where they're starting to cheer the heels and everything. But once again, we viewed it as a challenge. I said, this thing can hurt the fans' feelings and stink worse than a goddamn, maggot on a gut wagon, or we can, because they were great athletes. Tracy was tremendous. Steve comes from the Armstrong family. So Stan set up his karate spot with Tracy, which always got over. And Bobby set up the fucking double flying cross-body where he cross-bodied both the Midnight after that do-si-do spot. And we got some heat together in our minds. And then, back then, when they gave you the finish, they said, okay, Midnight over. And we worked it out. So I went and sat in the bathroom on the toilet for about an hour and figured out, all right, we got to take them on a fucking ride. So I put all the false finishes in. And the one thing Ole had said, none of that tennis racket bullshit. Make it a wrestling finish. That's why Stan won with the fucking kick to the back of the head from outside and blah, blah, blah. And we put that together, and they gave us some time. Yeah, because
18 minutes.
Because it was pay-per-view for 3 hours, they had to have something. So, tore the fucking house down. That's what we were supposed to do. We used to be rewarded for it when we did it for Crockett, but now we were penalized for it when we did it there because the herd didn't want that. So as a result of that, I don't know that we had 4 more matches on TV with this, or paper, and never again on pay-per-view with Southern Boys, and maybe 3 or 4 short matches on TV, and that was it ever.
Why did this match work so well with Steve and Tracy?
Because they were good baby faces. They knew how to work. They knew how to work Southern style, and they fucking kept their ears open and their mouth shut, and they listened to Bobby and Stan. And I sat on the toilet for an hour and come up with a finish that would get the fucking thing over. It's not fucking surgery. That's what you do. It's just that nobody else was fucking doing it because they were more interested in how can I get over instead of how can we get the match over or how can we get the other guys over. Because if we get the other guys over, then some of that fucking sunlight will spread on us. And Dennis Condrey set that standard for the Midnight Express our first week in Mid-South. He said, boys, we don't worry about getting over, we get the match over. If we get the match over, we will get over. And that's what we always did. And that's exactly the right thing to fucking do. Now, I'm not even knocking zinc. You bring Vader in, what are you going to have? Fucking 15 minutes was goddamn, fucking Rudy Kazuti, and he's fucking even already with the,
What's your opinion of, are you familiar with his work in Japan?
Yeah. Okay. I thought it was fucking brilliant that we actually got a guy that you could make a monster heel at that point in time. That's, that's something that we did not have on the card. So I thought that was fucking excellent.
The entrance.
Yeah.
The rather dramatic entrance. You a fan?
Yes. I love the fucking, I wish he'd have had that in fucking WWF. It might have helped. Vince never got Vader. Vince, he didn't get it. Leon didn't do himself any favors.
No, I was
Leon
gonna say,
complained a lot and whined and attacked the guy in Kuwait and got detained and all that shit. But the whole fucking, it wasn't phony, funny, goofy bullshit. It was, what the fuck? There's a 400-pound fucking guy with steam blowing out of these goddamn things, and I'm fucking scared of his ass. And then he got in the ring and beat people up. That's what he did. That's why Shawn Michaels didn't want to fucking work with him.
When we worked with him, we asked him what triggered the mask to go off, and he said in one of our favorite quotes ever, a mechanical mechanism. We asked what it was filled with. He said, a liquid fluid. True story, both counts.
Yes.
Same show.
He used to actually have a guy early on that traveled with him that was the fucking gimmick minder. Because that thing was huge, and it's not like you could fold it up and put it in your fucking bag.
Yeah, how do you fly with that fucking thing?
It had its own seat.
Wow.
That's the thing. Tommy, bless him, was the hottest baby face in the business in 1979 and 80, but this was 1990, and sometimes you let lightning out of the bottle, you can't fucking chase it back down 10 years later and catch it again.
When I hear MTV, goddammit, I think Jim Cornette
Yes.
and the Midnight Express. What the fuck's going on?
They couldn't get any of the guys really on, in those days, on mainstream television and news shows or entertainment shows or whatever. And basically, I can't even remember, oh my gosh, I'll botch the guy's name, so I ain't gonna say it, but there was a guy that was trying to do that for WCW. And he got a chance, he had an in, got a chance to have somebody on MTV. And he told me this at least. He said, well, you can talk and you can have fun and your guys look good and, you know, you probably do a good, and Stan was, China Cantner was one of the, Grace Slick's daughter, was one of the hosts, so Stan's hitting on her and, you know, and she's kind of smiling at him and everything and blah, blah, blah. So it was fun. It didn't sell a goddamn ticket, but at least we got to be on MTV.
How was your experience in New York? Did this begin your love affair?
Oh, fucking hell.
With New York City?
Yeah, I believe that was that wasn't the time that Francis Crockett went with us. That was a time when we were first going up for the Bunkhouse Stampede before Crockett had sold the thing, because Francis Crockett went with us on a publicity tour for the Bunkhouse Stampede Nassau Coliseum pay-per-view, first of '88, and the limo that the second-hand fucking discount limo she got, took us to a McDonald's in the middle of the worst neighborhood I've ever seen.
Wow.
And locked the keys in the car. So there I am with Bobby and Stan with that blonde hair standing out, and we were the fucking blondest, lightest thing in this fucking neighborhood. And I'm fucking scared shitless, because it's New York and we ain't used to that shit, right? And I mean, this was not a good neighborhood, and we're locked out of, and we're standing next to a limousine that we're locked out of, and there's Francis Crockett. Looked like, goddamn, she dressed up like she had charged the Light Brigade. She was the world's oldest fucking hooker, and it just, oh, it was fucking, what's the matter with you? I can't remember, I think that time is, we had a better time, and then we got out of there.
It's Ranger Ross.
That's right.
Wearing a mask and a full bodysuit to
Yes.
cover the fact that he's black.
Yeah.
Why not just get a fucking white guy?
He was
Huh?
he was one of them, as Burrhead Jones said one time, I'm a black Chinaman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What the fuck?
I don't know what to say.
What is this?
Here's the thing, a lot of times, Bobby and Stan weren't even on TV at that point. I was hosting an interview segment. So like in Gainesville, look, promos, see? I would have to drive a 420-mile round trip from Charlotte to Gainesville, Georgia,
to do promos.
to host the Louisville Slugger segment.
Right.
So I would leave at 10 o'clock in the morning, And I'd get there about 1:30, 1:45, and I'd sit there for a couple hours to do a 3-minute promo, and then I'd turn around and I'd drive back to Charlotte. And the boys weren't even on TV. And I was fucking just goddamn. As a matter of fact, see, we're working house shows with the Steiners at that point. Then I had to fly back from Miami to Charlotte and get in the car and drive down to Gainesville to do a 3-minute promo and then back.
Maybe with the Pearl.
No, I didn't do it with the Pearl.
What was your take on the Pearl?
I don't even remember. I didn't even stay for the matches.
Right.
No,
You
I
didn't
just
see him on
I did.
television.
I wasn't watching that shit.
Okay, good.
I did the fucking promo. I got back in the car and went back and fucking took my Zantac and fucking hated Jim Herd. What the fuck? The only good market we had at this point, it did $111,000, which was pretty much, once again, unheard of. But what's our date?
24th, yeah.
But once again, we were insulted because we get there. We are the U.S. Tag Team Champions, even though we never win a match. We're never on television. So we get there. We're working with the Steiners. And it's, okay, you guys are going to drop the belts once again. And this time, we're not going to hold them up or anything, but it was an insult, just a slap in the face that they didn't even bother to tell us. It was a cold match, no angle involved, no program. We've been getting beat by these guys in non-title matches on the house shows. And now, okay, now drop the belts to them. All right, but then the Steiners got hot because they didn't want the fucking things. Because then they'd have to put them in their bag and carry them around through the airport and everything. There's an extra fucking 15 pounds a piece they didn't fucking want. So we had a real good match with them, and they always liked working with us. But, you know, once again, it insulted midnight because they weren't even told until 45 minutes before the show.
So what do you
supposed
say?
To drop the... All right. Well, I mean, you know, what the fuck?
Who's telling you?
It was either Ole or whoever the agent was at that point. Don't even remember. And then we had to they had to talk to the Steiners. They had to do more convincing of the Steiners to win the fucking secondary belts that they'd have to carry around than they did to have us lose them. Yeah.
How were the crowds there? I mean, it's a big house, obviously.
Well,
you won't be offended. You can be honest.
Well, no, that's the thing. That was the only town we were drawing in.
I was at this show, and I have to tell you, a small Spanish man who was sitting behind me for the entire show yelled for an El Gigante run-in in every match, from the first match to the end. And at this point, when the Steiners won the title, he was sitting on the aisle.
Yeah.
He stood up and began to jump up and down. He fell down the entire flight of steps and cheered the entire way. Never once stopped to break his fall. His hands were going. He was so excited. So it worked. It worked for somebody.
One time at the Louisville Gardens in like 1975, I'd have no idea why, but there was a guy in the third row of ringside. Everybody was booing the heels. It was probably Lawler or whatever, and they were booing and cussing. And old fish meat face, this old woman was there with Coke bottle glasses, and she weighed about 62 pounds, and her face looked like it was made out of dead fish meat. That's why me and Bolin called her fish meat face. And she talked like that. The only thing you could hear, goddamn motherfucker. You'd only understand the cuss words. But this one guy was screaming, "Bridge on the River Kwai! Bridge on the River Kwai!" You remember the bridge over the River Kwai?
No, sure, yeah.
I don't know why. Anyway, right after, as a matter of fact, after the match we dropped the titles, that's when I called Herd before I went to Gainesville again.
You know what's going to happen now, right?
What?
You know what's going to happen now at WWE shows.
Bridge on the River Kwai!
All over the country.
Before I went to Gainesville again the next Monday to do a fucking promo again and nothing else, I called Herd. And I said, tell you what, because now I'm not even doing color commentary, which I enjoyed doing with Jim Ross, but they've taken me off color because, remember, Ole didn't like, for a while he didn't like color commentators. But then he put a color commentator, for 2 weeks he didn't like color commentators, and then he put a color commentator on every show, but I wasn't one of them. And I'm hosting the interview segment. So I called Herd. I said, tell you what, I said, you could have 2 fucking local job guys on the cards doing what the Midnight Express are doing, and they wouldn't need a manager, and you could save the fucking plane tickets. So give us half what you owe us on the rest of our contracts, and we will fucking leave. You know what he said? I don't want to set that precedent. It probably wasn't 6 months later, Jimmy Garvin, who the failed experiment that was the new Freebirds, Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy and Buddy Roberts were a revolutionary tag team. I was a fan. They were incredible. They set gate records. They was fucking brilliant. Michael Hayes and Terry Gordy was a world-class wrestler. Michael Hayes was a world-class talker. Buddy Roberts was a veteran that could get things done. Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin was a worst fucking heel team I've ever seen in my life. Jimmy Garvin had spent 10 years very successfully being a chicken shit pretty boy heel, and suddenly he's 5'9" and 205 and on the sauce and trying to work like one of the Road Warriors. And it hurt people's feelings. It was so fucking bad. And then it got to where they had little Richard Marley, poor Rocky King, and then Hump was involved in the whole thing. And it was a mess because Michael was in, you know, always in the office's ear. And Ole had drawn a bunch of money with him. But it wasn't 6 months after I said that, and he said, I don't want to set that precedent. They gave Jimmy Garvin $180,000 to get him out of his 2-year fucking contract to go home.
Really?
That's why he left.
Yeah.
They paid him off to fucking go home because he wanted out. But they had signed him 2 years, $150,000 a year by that point, so they saved money, but he wouldn't buy us out for half of what he owed us and just part friends. Well, we wouldn't have been friends. Al Perez was a good-looking guy. There was a good hand. Gary Hart had a lot of faith in him, but he somehow got the impression that he should be the world champion. And at one point, he demanded to know why that they weren't putting him over, fucking Flair wouldn't put him over, and why aren't they putting the belt on me, and et cetera, et cetera. He was fucking nuts, and I don't know whatever happened to it.
He's always, for me, been one of those mysterious characters that, like, has the look, good worker, like, why didn't he ever do anything? I mean, a little bit in Dallas.
Because he was nuts.
But it was him getting in his own way. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, they tried different people as the Scorpion.
Yeah.
In preparation for this. Randy Cully.
Yeah.
Bill Irwin.
Yeah.
You agree with this strategy of taking it on the road, seeing how it works before it gets to pay-per-view, trying different guys out?
No.
No.
No, why would I agree with that? It's the fucking stupidest thing anybody's ever done. Ole started a fucking murder mystery with a body and no killer. And then by the time he got to the last chapter where they were all gathered in the fucking drawing room, Mr. Mustard didn't have a candlestick because he didn't even have Mr. Mustard. It was fucking stupid. And now poor Ole, and like I said, I've made peace with him, and I love his brutal honesty and his fucking grumpiness, and he was one of the great promos of all time and made a huge amount of money. Ole Anderson was making $250,000 a year in the late 70s in the wrestling business, booking and working on top.
Yeah.
He was, his track record, but in the shape he's in now, I don't know whether he ever remembers what he had in mind for this, and I've never heard an explanation for it, but there was no Black Scorpion. And then they started needing a Black Scorpion, and he thought he was booking fucking, Columbus, Georgia for Fred Ward at that point, and he just put anybody under the goddamn. You couldn't do that anymore. And I don't know why all that happened. It just made everybody, including Sting, that it touched, turn to shit.
Blasters.
Man, I got to tell you the Master Blaster story. When were we in Detroit? Detroit at the Cobo Arena. Detroit, Michigan, Saturday night, September 15th. Pillman and Zink beat us. The original Master Blasters. Now, the second partner that Nash had was Big Al Green.
Yes.
Who Eddie Gilbert had named because of the original Don and Al Green, Big Al Green, But anyway, the first one, I don't know who the fuck he was. I can't remember. What was his working name? I don't even know. It
was
matter.
Steel and Iron.
And
yeah, it was
okay.
Iron.
We're in the back at the Cobo watching the matches in Detroit, and the Master Blasters are working with Brad Armstrong and Tim Horner. Now, if you cannot work with Brad Armstrong, you need to he could have a fucking 4-star match with a paraplegic. You need to get the fuck away, right? And that's exactly what this guy did. And I wish I could stand up in this environment, but I can't. But we're standing back watching this fucking match. And the guy's in with Brad. And some way he shoots Brad off and he hits the right, and they're supposed to do a spot, but the guy fucked it up. And Brad grabbed him and got a hold and called it again and settled it down, and they go to do, and they fucked up the second spot. And Brad settles it down, and the fucking guy tried again something. And finally, I've never seen this before or since in a wrestling match in front of people. The guy was so over his head, so overwhelmed, so confused about what he was supposed to be doing in the ring that he just turned to Nash and looked at Nash and did this, like, what am I supposed to do? Where you could tell from the back of the Kobo that this guy's going, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. They got out of the match. The fucking guy got dressed and left the building. And the story that I heard, and I have no reason to doubt it, was that he went to the bus station and bought himself a bus ticket to wherever the fuck he came from, and he took that bus and nobody ever saw him again.
Well, I don't even have his name. We don't even know who he was,
No,
right?
we don't know. That's Ole was trying to find anybody that would work cheap, that looked like they had a good body, and put a gimmick on them and throw them out there. And that's what guys like Brad Armstrong and Bobby Eaton and et cetera, were expected to fucking make something out of. But yeah, we all popped in the back because it was so obvious. It was almost like that it was on TV and we could hear the guy say, what am I doing? What do you want from me? Ole's idea, Bobby ran the gauntlet, which was a match on the Friday night show, a match on the Saturday night show, and a match on the Sunday night show. And if you won all three of them, you got some fictitious prize. Ole actually booked Bobby to run the gauntlet against heels as a babyface while he was appearing in the heel team as the Midnight Express. Yes, and even Bobby couldn't get a match out of Sid. Steiner.
Yeah, he does. I think he's the only one to successfully do this.
I think so.
Did they have plans for him to break out as a single here?
Once again, broken clocks right twice a day. Scott had the look, the body, charisma. He was an amateur guy that Ole would get into as an amateur, and he could legitimately fucking kick somebody's ass. And so, yes, they were definitely going to push him from the start. So, once again, that wasn't a bad idea.
His win over Flair in the gauntlet match in a non-title setting, is Rick's stock falling, or is this something Rick would offer to help get Scott over?
I wasn't in the meeting. Possibly a little of both. Is all I can say, because I think Flair always at that point liked Scotty, and Ole, was probably going to do what Hurd was trying to figure any way he could to bury Flair, or marginalize Flair. So he would have been all for that. And that on September 10th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've got Scott versus Bobby. Bobby. Got the heat, made a comeback. Stan tripped Scott. Scott pulled Stan up. Bobby ran. Scott moved. Bobby hit Stan. Scott shoots Bobby off. Bobby drops an elbow on the back of his head when he tries for the backdrop, gets a 1-2. I grab the ref, say, what the fuck are you doing? It should have been 3. Bobby throws Scott over the top rope, which should have been a disqualification. That brings Rick up. But when Scott went over the top rope, Scott skinned the cat, came back in, Rick distracted Bobby, Scott gave Bobby the fucking Frankensteiner 1-2-3. That was the match. Yeah, we put Doom over for the World Tag Team title, then Bobby put Scott over, then we beat the Southern Boys when the Freebirds interfered. That was the only win we got. And then on September 11th, we were booked in Dayton, September 12th in Canton, September 13th in Portsmouth, and off.
Pissed off.
I decided, you know what? I don't feel good, and for the first time ever, I'm just going to say, fuck it, I ain't going to go. What are they going to do, fire me? I wish they would. So I took 3 days off. Because we were supposed to do single matches. It was, Brian Pillman, and then Bobby was supposed to work with Rotunda, whatever the fuck. I'd forgotten about that. No, you know why I did it? I said, I like the fucking line. I didn't cuss. If you want to use that, use it. If you don't want to use it, don't fucking use it. I ain't doing it again.
Okay.
I remember that now. Well, look, fucking, once again, all these fucking matches, plus I'm out there, I'm sweating my fucking balls off. It's my goddamn birthday. And we do a fucking promo that I thought was good. And they say, oh, don't take out the inflatable date line and do it again. Motherfucker, no. I ain't doing it fucking again. Use that or don't use it at all. See you later. I'm done. That was that.
It was that.
No, it wasn't over a fucking angle. I knew they weren't going to do any angles I suggested. Well, he wasn't put. He'd been doing that gimmick out there. It wasn't like he was put into it.
Okay.
Here's the thing: Art Barr, and as would be in the next 3 years when he had that fucking AAA run, would be one of the best heels in the business and a tremendous fucking performer. I managed his older brother Jesse when I was a rookie in Memphis. And it reads worse the way that you said that. But here's the fucking deal. Yes, he had some cocaine in fucking Oregon, and well, if you know, crossed everybody off the roster that had an issue or with whatever, then you wouldn't have a roster. And he was diddling around with some fucking rat in the stairway, and the rat's parents or whatever found out, and she happened to be underage. It wasn't like he was assaulting kids at the playground. It wasn't, he didn't force anything on anybody, at least the story that I've fucking heard. It was, once again.
It was a willing 11-year-old.
I got news for you. There was a fucking girl in Spartanburg, South Carolina, that at the age of 16 looked like Anna Nicole Smith. She was 6 feet tall and probably weighed 170 pounds. And if her mother had found out what she had done in Spartanburg, let's just say this, in 1986, Jim Crockett Promotions would have closed down. And I'm talking about everybody probably except Ric Flair. So
everybody except Rick?
Except Rick, only because Rick had other business.
Okay.
So, that kind of thing happened back in those days, but it was in Oregon, and what happened was they brought him in. He was doing the Beetlejuice gimmick, and they called him the juicer because they couldn't use Beetlejuice. Yeah. And then as soon as he starts getting over one of the bright spots, some fucking asshole that didn't like him sends the fucking newspaper clippings from Oregon about the old news, and fucking Herd, of course, fires one of the only fucking new talents that we actually brought in that could mean something.
The juicer name kind of added to it a little bit.
If it couldn't be Beetlejuice, they just...
BJ? Beetlejuice? No.
Well, BJ may not have been... Yeah, it may not have been...
Either. I think it should have nixed the gimmick.
Stan and I missed the plane.
Going or coming?
Going. Because we had heard the stories about what happened in the Bahamas to the heels, right? And we're going over and work 2 fucking underneath singles matches. And so I went out with Jeff Bowdren and Dave Heath before he was Gangrel, and Tom Nash and some of the Florida guys, and Stan had lady friends in Florida. And we just somehow missed the plane, and we told Bobby what we were doing. We said, Bobby, don't go. He went. He said, Corny, he said the ring it was outdoor stadium. He said the ring was so filthy it looked like they'd run fucking cattle through it. He said the fans threw rocks at us and cups of piss. Yeah. We had to walk from the hotel through this crowd with everybody fucking screaming and everything. And to fly through the Bermuda Triangle for these fucking people. And then Gordon Soley had something to do with the promotion. And when we were the next day or at TV on the Monday or whatever, he said, why weren't you guys? I said, Gordon, we missed the plane. Wouldn't you know who won the pony? Fuck. Everybody was percolating.
You say that with a wink and a smile? We missed the plane?
No, I said it with a straight fucking face, because if he couldn't figure it out, I wasn't going to fucking help him. Jim Ross had gotten more control on the booking committee. Because Ole, I think, was starting to lose interest. And I think they were starting to lose interest in Ole. And I went to JR and I said, this is fucking ridiculous. He won't buy us out. He won't let us go. I don't want to fucking, we've still got till next April. Bobby's got a family. To give us something to do. You're Giant. Jorge, Giant Gonzalez. Can we get the fucking Giant over? Put us on the Clash. Have a 6-man, because we'd been doing a thing on the house shows and et cetera with Southern Boys. I said, we'd love to work with the Southern Boys. I said, Herd shouldn't mind that since he don't like them either. So we'll just go out and have the best match on the show again. And go to the Clash with a 6-man, and I'll take a slam from the fucking Giant. And he can pin me and get the Giant over with the big foot on the chest, the whole 9 yards, get his hand up, Okay, so that was what was agreed to. We would have 6-man tag. The Giant would give me the fucking slam. That was going to be the Clash. What was the date of the Clash?
27th.
That was the pay-per-view. The Clash was in November. It was November 15th, I think. Whatever the fuck. Anyway, we didn't get there. That's the point I'm making. Because I get the fucking booking sheets. This was right before we caused the riot in Altoona. I get the booking sheets the following week. And at that time, they booked house shows about 6 weeks out. We're in 6-man tags almost every night. Where if we go from not working at all and doing jobs for everybody when we do to working like fucking 6 weeks in a row every fucking night, and I'm gonna have to take a slam from that big clumsy motherfucker every fucking night. I didn't goddamn, agree to that. So I'm already pissed off. Then we go to Altoona on the 19th, and we're having a match with the Steiners. We decide we're gonna have a good match again. So in the process, having a good match, we're getting some heat. Guy comes over the fucking rail, tackles Bobby. Bobby fucking grabs him around the waist. He's going for Bobby's eye. I come around the fucking corner with the racket, and I fucking, the most perfect racket shot ever in history. Whacked him right here, boom, with the edge of it. I've still got the racket on my wall in my office. It's bent in. I actually talked to, who the fuck was it that said they were there? Son of a bitch, can't even remember. Oh, it was a guy at the show in Parkersburg, West Virginia. He was just a fan then. Now he's a wrestler. Imagine that. And he said the blood spurted, God, 4 or 5 rows. Looked like a Tommy Rich Buzz Sawyer juice job. So I fucking knocked a guy goofy. The security's nowhere because it's rent-a-cops. There's not even any real cops. So they kick the fucking guy out of the building finally when they come down there. Because the Tommy Young actually got from the stage to the fucking, it wasn't Tommy Young, it was Nick Patrick. Got from the stage to the ring before the rent-a-cops got there at all. They ushered the guy out the front door and let him go. He's now bleeding he's cut from asshole to appetite, and he's bleeding to his boots. And they just told him, go away, get out, and turn around, and walk back inside. So we're continuing the match, and the people are fucking going, and boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, Bobby looks behind me and says, watch out, corny. I turn around, and there's the guy doing the zombie walk. He's walked right back in the front door. Now the people are coming up because here's one of their own that we've juiced, right? And he's still spurting blood. And we got the Steiners down and stand called Sunset Flip. Whew. Boom. 1, 2, 3, we get the fuck out. We work Louisiana. We know how to do this. As soon as we get in the locker room, we grab our bags. We don't change. We head for the fucking car. Well, meanwhile, now the guy's down and he's gone into convulsions. So as we get in the car, we pull out of the front of the building and turn left instead of right. So now we're going away from the interstate instead of toward it. If we go about fucking 3 miles down the road, and oh shit, we got to go around. As we go back by the fucking building, now 10 minutes later, there's 5 or 6 cop cars in the front. There's 2 ambulances, everything but a helicopter with a goddamn searchlight. They're loading the guy. They said the guy passed out. They're loading the guy feet first into the fucking ambulance. The Steiners were on the stage of the Jaffa Mosque in Altoona trying to play with the police dogs. They're asking, where's the Midnight Express? So now, as we're headed to the fucking interstate, Bobby and Stan have towels over their heads. And I'm fucking driving. Here comes blue lights. I'm like, fuck, boys, we're cooked. Shoot right past us. We've been gone so long, they think we must be on the interstate now. They shot past us, can't find us. They even went to the hotel the next morning and pulled up in front of Tom Zink. Are you Bobby Eaton? No. It made the Associated Press. Wrestling fan knocked out at ringside. His story was he was standing by the apron or by the railing taking pictures when I suddenly began clubbing him for no reason. So in the space of 10 days, I find out I'm gonna have to take 40 fucking slams from a 7'7" fucking klutz. We start a fucking riot where we almost go to fucking jail when the guy fucking hops the fucking rail and jumps us. It makes the Associated Press. Then we go to Halloween Havoc.
You enjoy this finish?
No.
Why not?
It was inventive. Barry Windham cut his hair to where he looked like Sting. But people didn't fucking get it. It just did. People didn't understand it. It was too cute. They understood it on television because the people, it was explained by the announcers and the camera work and et cetera, but the people in the building were like, what the fuck? What? And so it just, if the announcers have to tell you that in that much detail what happened, I don't know, but already, you know, I'd already had my jaw dislocated that fucking night and was pissed off anyway, so maybe I was just in a bad mood.
Remember why Elvira wasn't used on the show, but she was in the promos?
Because they didn't want to pay her to come to Chicago. She just did shit in the studio. They would have had to pay her to come, if she would even indeed to lower herself to come to Chicago and participate in that. Okay, we get there, we're supposed to work with the rock and roll. So okay, at least, well, once again, we'll have a great match again, won't matter, but they put it on first. So we're jerking the curtain on the pay-per-view, and this was back before it was like, we're gonna start the show hot. It was just, this was the opening preliminary match. Mm-hmm. And that's when Robert hurt his knee. So it was Tommy Rich and Ricky Morton as a makeshift team. So Bobby Eaton, to get this fucking thing over, even does the rocket launcher onto the fucking wooden ramp. And boom, 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 we go 20 minutes with a makeshift team. It's never teamed before in their life, and no disrespect to either Ricky or Tommy. And then we put them over. And what some people said was one of the better matches on the show. Then try to juice this thing up, what we're supposed to do on the Clash with the Southern Boys. The Master Blasters are going to beat the Southern Boys, Blade and Steel. This time they got the new, along with Nash, who couldn't stick his thumb in his ass 3 tries, and this other fucking... And they're going to beat our opponents because I go out and... But these guys shouldn't even have been on television. I would have fired them. I'm not saying this because it's Kevin Nash. If they had been in OVW, I would have fired them because they were rotten. They were rotten for a wrestling school. They're on national TV. They're going to beat the Southern Boys. The Midnight Express just got beaten. And we're supposed to be going to the Clash for this big feature match. I go out in a Confederate general's uniform because it's Halloween Havoc and everybody's got to be dressed up. And in the finish meeting, Ole had suggested that after I caused the Southern Boys to lose, then they would take one of the jack-o'-lanterns
and put it on your head
and hit me over the head with it, and I'd be running around with a pumpkin on my head.
Right.
And I said, Ole, I'm not putting a pumpkin on my head. I said, I said, we're losing. Then our opponents are losing, and the smidgen of heat that I might get for causing the babyface to lose, then they're going to fucking wear it off with and they're not going to put a pumpkin on my head. And Ole always hated Tennessee wrestling, right? So he's like, well, why? That's something Nick Goulas would have done. I said, well, the difference is Nick Goulas drew money, and he didn't like that.
Oh boy, did you say it?
Yes, I said that. So I said, they can beat me up, but they ain't putting a pumpkin on my head. So then Janie Engel comes up to me, the girl in the office, right? And I love Janie. And she said, Corny, whatever you do, don't tear the general's uniform because it's rented and we've got to take it back.
But that wasn't yours?
No.
We assume everyone in the South has one.
No, they rented it, and the pants were fucking like a size 2 and the fucking jacket was too big and this fucking hat. I said, don't worry, Janie, I'll take care of it like it was my own baby, right? First thing I went to Tracy and Steve, I said, okay, rip the fucking jacket up the back off of me. And God, that thing was trashed, destroyed, whatever the fuck. Come back, oops, right? So they did that, and then in the midnight match, they had installed that ramp for the guys to come out because Vince used something like that. Yes. So they have to do everything Vince did. Right. So because of the ramp, when we go to do the spot where Ricky and Bobby are doing the crisscross, and then Ricky dives out and chases me, and I roll in, and Bobby's coming off, and I stand up, and he hits me with a tackle, and I take a big bump. Well, I can't go the right way I'm supposed to go because of the ramp, so I'm going the other way. Well, I'm going the other way. I get the floor cameraman gets in my fucking way. I have to go around him, so when I roll in, I'm late standing up, and I always tell Bobby, bring it, come full force, because we're going to hit shoulder to shoulder, and I'll just fly, right? It helped me. The harder he would hit me in the shoulder, the bigger bump I would take. I got delayed a second. As I'm standing up, he's coming, point of his shoulder in my chin, bam! Dislocates my fucking jaw, busts me open here, that little scar under there. So now they said no blood on pay-per-views, and now I'm bleeding down my fucking tie, and Stan's like, Corny, you got juice. I said, good, maybe they'll kick this fucking thing off the air. So The next day, after I go out with my in-laws that night and can't chew my dinner, the next day, guess where WCW, the second biggest wrestling promotion in the country, the fucking national TV attraction with all these major stars, guess where we run? Farmland, Indiana, where we put the Southern Boys over.
Big house?
Oh, sure, $11,000. That was almost 1,000 people. Then the next day we fly back to Charlotte. This is the beginning of the end, and then we'll finish out the year. We go back to Charlotte, and then we get in the car. We can't go home. We're only 10 miles from the house, and we haven't been fucking home, as you can see, in 4 or 5 days. So we can't go home because we got to rush to Anderson, South Carolina for TV, where we find out that a couple weeks ago we had 5 matches in one night. No matches. Stan's working a single match with Steve Armstrong. Bobby's not working. Nobody bothered to tell him. He could have stayed home with his family, but now he's in the car with us, so he can't come back. He's got to sit there all fucking... And this was before all the guys just had to go to TV. If you weren't booked, you didn't have to go to TV, right? So Bobby sits there like a spare prick at the wedding all night. Stan has one single match, which he loses, and then we drive on to Atlanta because we got center stage the next day.
We get that.
I quit because I fucking get up that day thinking I can't take this anymore. And we get there, and what do we see on center stage on the lineup? 4 tag team matches, and we're going to lose every single one of them. So I fucking go into the dressing room Ole used for the office and to give finishes and everything. I said, Ole, what if we post-produce everything now? Bobby couldn't spend a day with his fucking family yesterday because nobody told him he wasn't working. Now we're working 4 times in one night. We couldn't have done 2 of those yesterday. He said the magic words, and I will never forget this, is ingrained in my mind. It was the nicest thing I ever heard. He said, if you don't like it, go home. I said, Ole, that's the best idea you've ever had. I turned around. I said, I'll see you later. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going home. He said, well, you'll be sorry when you're back in Memphis with that dog and pony show. I said, no, I won't. And I slammed the door. I said, Stan, give me your keys. He said, why? I said, I'm going fucking home. He said, what? I said, I'm done. He said, hold on, I'll go with you. Because he had a paternity suit at the time, and he figured they were going to get some of his money anyway, and he was fed up with these fuckers. But then we both looked at Bobby, and Bobby's got 3 kids, and Bobby's got a wife, and so we had the little meeting, and we said, look, it was like the end of Casablanca. We'll all be together again someday or whatever. Because we figured in April or May, his deal will be up, and I was already probably going to have Smoky Mountain Wrestling well on the way at that point. And he said, guys, I know you got to go. He said, I got to stay. I said, yes, we do. So, and we, had the team fucking meeting, and then me and Stan got in the car. I felt like I'd been paroled from prison. I have never had a ride so happy in my life. And Stan started about halfway to Charlotte. He was kind of like, it was $120-something thousand or whatever. I said, fuck it. I quit on more than that. So Bobby said about an hour or 2 later, Ole came to him because he's got 4 fucking matches, right? He said, where are those guys? And Bobby said, Ole, I think they're about halfway back to Charlotte. So when are they coming back? And Bobby said, Ole, I don't think they are. And we didn't. And basically, I sat home for about a week.
I like on the page after the I quit.
Yes.
You're off.
Well, see, we were originally off anyway because that was a day that we were booked off. But look, see here, I've crossed all these out. Right. But real briefly, sat home for about a week and then called me on the phone. Said, well, they sent me this letter first. There was reports to me indicates that there was a misunderstanding involving you and the booker, Ole Anderson. I've had further conversations with people close to you that indicate you've been quoted as saying you will not return to WCW. The company must take the position that if you do not make your scheduled commitment starting on November 1st, blah, 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 you will consider you in breach of your contract and no further monetary compensation will be paid to you. And if you have a desire to try to resolve this issue, please contact me. And he'd called and left me a message. So I called him back. I said, Jim, I ain't coming back. I said, and you can give me a release or not. He said, well, I'm not going to just let you go walk right into the WWF. I said, I just got finished with 1 cartoon wrestling promotion. I'm not going to another one. I've got some things I want to do, because I knew I was going to Memphis probably to do something short term, and I was going to set up Smoky Mountain. I said, you can send me a release, or I'm going to do what I want to do anyway, and you sue me, and I don't give a fuck. But I'm not going to the WWF, and I'm not coming back there because I'm done with you. You can take that fucking company, shove it up your fucking ass. You've been wanting rid of us. Well, you got rid of us, and I'm rid of you, and I think we're both going to be happier that way. And he sent me a release and never even excluded going to the WWF, which he said he was going to do. But
Right.
I could do anything I wanted, but I wasn't going to the WWF anyway. So he couldn't even write a release right. Fucking moron. I mean, it might have actually been it was better than Captain Mike, I thought, and he got some heat and he had the suit and everything, but basically, Vince just took it and did it much better. IRS.
Right.
So, and Terry, Terry was the makeup girl.
Right.
At TBS. And she was beautiful and gorgeous, and she'd been around the guys long enough to kind of pick up things, and I don't know whose idea it was, but they made her Alexandra York.
Very conservative character, a far cry from what Terry ends up doing in the WWF later.
Well, that's because Shitstain wasn't involved yet.
Which is closer to the real Terry?
I don't know if either one was really close. Terry was a normal person. She wasn't this bitchy, conservative, buttoned-up businesswoman, but she certainly wasn't a cigar-smoking fucking, whatever Marlena was. But Marlena worked a whole lot better. Let's put it. Have you noticed that Vince can take... He turns Mean Mark Callis into The Undertaker. He turns fucking Michael Wall Street into IRS. He turns Alexandra York into Marlena. Vince McMahon could take guys that were right under their fucking nose and just instantly, that's one thing. I mean, and Vince had some misfires too, but it was almost like it was a game where he could take fucking guys that they couldn't draw 15 cents in Chinese money with and make something out of just by tweaking it just a little bit that you would think would have been common sense.
Is AWA so far gone by now that we really shouldn't even consider it?
Well, they were
viable
just at that point. They were just doing TV tapings, and in a lot of cases, at that point, except for maybe a few people at the top, Larry probably would have been one of those. The deal was if you flew yourself to Las Vegas, you could be on the AWA taping. They weren't even buying guys plane tickets in a lot of cases.
Wow.
So, once again, be the AWA champion was like being the fucking, I guess in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, but, Larry wanted to see out of both eyes.
What'd you think of Larry?
I like Larry. He's funny. He was a great talent in his day. He wasn't the cup of tea of a lot of the smart fans because he was a heel, and he wasn't worried about work rate. He was worried about getting some heat and getting the fucking match over, his stalling and shit, and it worked, and he was master at it. But to this day, he was the biggest drawing house show program and fucking house of all time in the WWF for that thing with Bruno. It was the right place at the right time, fucking masterfully done. Everybody carried off their part. Hurd was willing to be sold that, and I'm not knocking Pat O'Connor, but because of his St. Louis connection. Okay, the Pat O'Connor Memorial Tag Team Tournament will mean something, but the fucking teams, read that list of teams.
Take it.
Colonel de Klerk and Sergeant Kruger from South Africa, Rey Mysterio Sr. and Conan from Mexico. Bobby called me one time when they brought Conan in, and I'm Conan, I love you, I'm not knocking you, but Bobby told me, he said, I worked with that fucking Conan. What the fuck? He said, Corny, he shot me off and I hit the ropes. I'm looking and he's doing a forward roll. And he leaped up and he said, you can't, Bobby could not get anything out of him. And, Conan, Mexico's a whole different animal than the United States. Anyway, Chris Adams and Norman Smiley from the UK Rip Morgan and Jack Victory, they're decent. Victor Zangiev, I mean, if that's how you pronounce it, and Hashimakov, they were really legitimate Russians and had been broke in from Inoki when Inoki got the Russian, sort of like Trump does now, had the Russian connection. And Danny Johnson and Troy Montour from Canada, who I don't know who the fuck. I don't know if anybody else knows what the fuck. So the Steiners won that tournament over Muta and Saito from Japan. So that was one of the most prestigious tournaments in the history of, and
international flavor.
That was Starrcade. We went from Starrcade in Greensboro to that. The fans brought the tickets back they had bought the previous week. That was so fucking bad for a refund. And then Ric Flair was the Black Scorpion.
It was never supposed to be Flair from the beginning, right?
No, it just what the fuck else they gonna do?
Flair
go back to Flair.
Yeah, well.
Because, you know,
it works.
It's as Lawler said one time on Memphis TV when the director got fucked up and the shots were, he said, just put the camera on me. It's a safe shot every time. You fucked up, just put Flair in the ring. He'll try to straighten it out.
He cuts his hair here, though.
Well, that was also part of what Hurd insisted. That because Hurd thought, oh no, he needed to be Spartacus. He was going to make him a gladiator at one point.
Rick.
Yes. Hurd thought Flair could cut his hair and fucking get a gladiator outfit and be Spartacus. So he cut his hair partially to get under the fucking mask, but also because Hurd wanted him to have an updated look instead of being so fucking old-fashioned. Like cool is somehow dated. With the product that WCW was presenting at that time, to have a working agreement with New Japan Pro Wrestling, which at that time presented wrestling pretty straight as a fucking sport,
right, is
kind of like, well, I'm going to date myself here by saying, but Vanessa Del Rio, a famous porn star working with Mother Teresa. You know, Vanessa Del Rio, whose famous line in one of the movies was, "My asshole wants to suck cock," should be tag team partners with Mother Teresa. That's what WCW and New Japan working agreement was like. And then...
Did you ever borrow for your promos from Vanessa?
When you borrow from one thing, it's plagiarism. When you borrow from many, it's research. December 29, 1990, Tom Zink wins the TV title over Arn Anderson.
Yeah, what do you have to say about that?
Why not?
So if you had to sum up the year of 1990 in your entire career, were lessons learned at least? I mean,
I made a lot of money. I made a lot of money, and I've never been more miserable in my life.
Yeah.
And it was the 1989 WCW. You can look back on as there was Flair and Steamboat, and they still had some of the talent, and the fans were still willing to work with them and give them a chance. 1990 is the year where Jim Herd destroyed WCW, its talent roster, and its fan base to the point where, for the next 6 years, because remember, it wasn't until 1997, right, that WCW made a profit. So basically, for 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, and most of 96, Vince McMahon had an unobstructed chance to be basically be professional wrestling in the United States. So when you look back in history, that was a lead that was insurmountable, and Bischoff did it for a couple of years. They made a profit when he took the NWO and did that whole thing. Didn't know how to follow up on it, couldn't sustain it. But Vince had pretty much from the time that Turner Broadcasting bought Crockett out in 1988 until late 96, early 97, no competition whatsoever. The opponents were jokes, wide open field. He became wrestling in the United States. By 1997, he was even drawn in the Carolinas. WWF Wrestling never drew in the Carolinas, in Tennessee, in Georgia, or certain parts of Texas because they were used to good wrestling. That ended because a generation passed. So if you want to talk about who won the wrestling war and why, ultimately it comes down to Jim Herd starting the path for WCW to not be any competition for that 8 years. They gave Vince an 8-year head start. It was impossible to catch up. Jim Herd is the reason why that we now have sports entertainment instead of pro wrestling. And 1990 was the year that cemented that.
Well, as troubling as it might have been, I thank you for your trip down memory lane. That's for Jim Herd, I guess.
You know he's still alive, don't you?
Not only that, but today...
He's fucking still alive. He looked like he was 80 27 years ago.
Today, we tweeted a page of the script, the page about the Pepsi heart attack.
Yeah.
And I said, guess we'll be talking about Jim Herd tonight with Jim Cornette for Timeline. And somebody retweeted it and tagged Jim Herd.
That's a fake account. It's not really him. On Twitter.
Are you sure about that?
Look it up right
We're
now.
going to investigate it.
I've seen one that's a
joining
rib,
us.
but it's a fake account.
And we're gonna.
But if it's real, please let me know, because I will fucking torment him until the end of time.
We're gonna tweet Jim
If
Herd.
anybody wants to know who the Grinch that stole wrestling was, it's Jim fucking Herd. And if you're in the St. Louis area and you can find that 87-year-old cocksucker, please slap him in the face for me. You know how I was going to quit before it ended up happening that way? I'll tell you this and I'll let you go.
Do tell.
In the car with the Midnight Express driving up and down the road, I said, boys, when I do quit, I'm going to take a blank pistol, one of those starter's pistols, and I'm going to kick the office door in of that motherfucker's in CNN Center, and I'm going to fire 4 shots at him.
Don't say
No,
that.
I said I'm going to fire 4 shots at him. You know what Bobby Eaton said? He said, Corny, he said, as many motherfuckers as hates that asshole, don't you think he's got a real one in the top desk drawer? I said, shit, I never thought of that. That's why I didn't do it.
Fake account.
There you go.
No one would say of themselves, former manager of Pizza Hut, head of World Championship Wrestling, recovering alcoholic.
Yeah, because believe me,
Not
he
recovering?
ain't recovering.